The Panthers traded how much for the first overall pick? What's up, everybody? Welcome back to ENT Football. Before we get into the video, make sure you guys go down below, like the video, comment on the video, who you think won this trade, and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get right into it. So on Friday, it became official that the Chicago Bears traded the #1 overall pick to the Carolina Panthers in exchange for DJ Moore, the #9 pick in this year's draft, the number 61 pick in this year's draft, which is a second rounder, also a 2024 first round pick, and a 2025 second round pick. So now that all the details are out of the way, we kind of already knew for a little while that the Bears were most likely going to trade down. The Bears already have their franchise quarterback in Justin Fields, and so in order to continue building a complete team around Justin Fields, it seemed like the best option was to trade the first overall pick and maybe get some more assets that you can use and continue building that team around Justin Fields. There was a lot of talks that maybe they would trade down to 4, which would be with the Indianapolis Colts, but they end up trading with the Panthers. And so I'm going to look at this trade from both sides. First, from the side of the Chicago Bears. I think this is a great move for the Bears. They ended up getting a haul in return for the first overall pick. The biggest hole that was missing on this team was wide receiver, and they're bringing in DJ Moore, who is a proven receiver. He's not quite like a game changer, but he's close to that tier. He's probably a tier or 2 tiers below like the game changer tier. He's a great #1 wide receiver to have. This is going to benefit Justin Fields tremendously. I think having DJ Moore there is going to take a lot of pressure off of Justin Fields. And also with having Darnell Mooney on that team, Mooney is a guy he's a great deep threat. He's a speedster. He's going to get open deep, and he's going to really stretch out the defense. And I think that's a nice 1-2 punch with DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney. Chase Claypool, I like Chase Claypool. A lot of people don't. I just don't like Chase Claypool as like a #1 or 2 receiver on a team. But now that he's the #3 receiver on this team, I think that's a good spot for him. There's not going to be that much pressure on him. And like towards the end of the season last year when Darnell Mooney was hurt, we saw like the top 2 receivers on the Bears were Chase Claypool and Equanimous St. Brown. That's just not a recipe for success when you have a young quarterback like Justin Fields. And so adding DJ Moore, a proven #1 receiver, is going to benefit Fields greatly. I'm also a big fan of Cole Kmet, who is their tight end. I predicted that last season he was going to break out. He started the season kind of slow, but as the season progressed, we really saw Cole Kmet really break out towards the end of the year. They're building some good pieces around Justin Fields on that offense. They're also bringing in the #9 overall pick in this year's draft, and they have some options with that pick. If I were the Bears, I would go with an offensive lineman. They could use a lot of help in the front 7. They traded Roquan Smith last year, and ever since that, their front 7 on defense has just been super, super lackluster. So I could see them continuing to build up their depth and their strength in that part, but I think the best option would be to get an offensive lineman. At #9, Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State, who's a tackle. He should be available around there. If I was the Bears GM, I would pick him. I think he's got a lot of potential, and just continue to build this offense around Justin Fields, I think would benefit them greatly. And their offensive line is terrible right now, and just getting a little bit more protection for Justin Fields, I think would be great. They're also bringing in the number 61 pick, which is a second-round pick, and that's important because they traded their second-round pick last season for Chase Claypool, so they're bringing back in another second-round pick, and they're also getting the Panthers' 2024 first-round pick. Now, to me, this is a huge like cherry on top of this trade for the Bears because most likely the Panthers are not going to be that good next year, and so this is likely going to be like a top 10 draft pick. Again, bringing in more pieces to continue establishing players on this team, to continue building this roster forward. And also what you have to take into consideration is that the Bears had the most cap space going into this offseason. Now, obviously, that has changed now that they're bringing in DJ Moore, but still they have a ton of cap space. So this team is going to continue making splashes in free agency. They might not be done trading. They invested a lot into the cornerback position in last year's draft, so I don't really see them going corner that much in this year's draft. But again, the biggest weaknesses of this team now are the front 7 on defense and the offensive line. And if they continue to build and, fill in those weaknesses here and there with young players or established players, I think the Bears' future is going to continue looking brighter and brighter, and especially with the flashes that Justin Fields showed last season. And so I'm going to grade this trade an A+ for the Bears because they're only dropping down from the #1 pick to the number 9 pick in the draft, right? That's an 8 pick drop. And because of that, they're bringing in DJ Moore, a 2nd round pick in this year's draft, a 1st rounder in next year's draft, and a 2nd rounder in 2025. So they're bringing in all these assets just to drop down 8 picks in this year's draft. And I think that's a huge W for them. And so now from the Panthers' perspective, I do also like this trade for the Panthers because they've basically been looking for like a franchise quarterback ever since Cam Newton left. They tried out Teddy Bridgewater. They tried taking a chance on Sam Darnold, tried taking a chance on Baker Mayfield. At the time, I liked those moves for them, and I still do like those moves for them, even though they didn't really work out. Taking a chance on Darnold and Mayfield, I thought, in the position of their franchise, I thought was a good idea, right? They didn't really have much going on. You might as well take a shot on these 2 young quarterbacks who had a lot of potential. And even though it didn't work out with either Mayfield or Darnold, I do appreciate their aggressiveness to try and, take a chance on a guy like that who, they say one man's trash is another man's treasure. And that's kind of what the Panthers were trying to do there the last 2 years with these guys who were highly touted young prospects who didn't really work out on their first team. Try to retread it. You know what I'm saying? And try and take a chance. Maybe it'll turn into treasure. It didn't really work out, but now they're making another big splash, and I appreciate how the Panthers are being aggressive. They were sitting at the number 9 pick, and they were kind of in no man's land, right? They don't have a franchise quarterback. They weren't really in the position to select one with the number 9 pick, and so they were aggressive. They went out, and they got the number 9 pick to try and select their franchise quarterback. Now, I think the most likely pick is going to be CJ Stroud. I think that's the most likely pick. Frank Reich seems to like bigger, more technically sound pocket passers. CJ Stroud is the best at that right now, and I think that's why they're going to select him. Bryce Young is great, but he's a little too small, and there's a lot of question marks about his frame and his size. And Frank Reich historically just hasn't been a guy who would want to take a chance on a guy like that. I could also see them going with Anthony Richardson out of Florida. He's been getting a lot of hype in recent weeks, especially after his combine. They could take a chance on him there, but I don't know if they would do that at the number 1 pick. I think the most likely selection is CJ Stroud. Now, there is a lot of potential at the number 1 pick for them to get a huge hit. This can be a home run for the Panthers, and we can look back on this in 5 years and be like, even though they traded a lot, it was still good for them that they got their franchise guy. On the other hand, we could look back on this in 5 years and be like, man, they gave up so much to get the number 1 pick, and it blew up in their face. And that's a huge possibility, right? It's either hit or miss when you're trading up for a quarterback like this, right? I remember, I believe it was 2016 when the Rams traded up with the Titans to select Jared Goff, and they gave up a lot in that trade. And it was kind of a miss, you know what I'm saying? They ended up trading Goff, and they got Matthew Stafford, and they won a Super Bowl, so it didn't really turn out terrible for them, but as far as just Jared Goff being their franchise quarterback, it didn't really work out. And there's a chance that happens with the Panthers in this situation, but I do appreciate the aggressiveness to just go out and get it done, right? The Panthers could have just stayed where they were. They could have just stayed pat at number 9 and hoped a guy like Will Levis out of Kentucky fell down to them at number 9, and that could have been their quarterback. But going out of their way to trade up and get the number 1 pick, it's their choice. Whichever guy they like the most out of these quarterbacks is the guy they're going to pick, and I respect that. But there is a huge chance giving up this many assets that it could blow up in their face. Also, again, I mentioned this in the Bears portion of the video, but them giving up next year's first-round pick, I don't like at all. I don't like that at all because you're bringing in not CJ Stroud. You're bringing in a quarterback, right? You want to continue to build this team around that quarterback, and giving up your next year's first-round draft pick, I don't really like it. I don't really like it at all because the Panthers most likely are not going to be that good of a team next year, even with their new quarterback. And that pick is probably going to be pretty high. It's probably going to be like at least a top 10 pick, I would say. I'm not a fan of that move personally because your number 1 receiver right now is Terrence Marshall. After you got rid of DJ Moore, your number 1 receiver is Terrence Marshall. Now, I don't see them going into the season like that. I think maybe in free agency they could be in play to sign a guy like Jacoby Myers. Maybe they end up drafting another receiver. I don't know. We'll see. And also at the running back position, Deonta Foreman is a free agent right now, if I'm not mistaken. They're left with Chuba Hubbard. Now, Chuba Hubbard, I like Chuba Hubbard, but he hasn't really done that much to show that he's a starting running back in this league. And so giving up this many assets when you're supposed to be continuing to build up this team and this roster, I don't really like how much they gave up. And I do think that whatever quarterback they do take is going to end up struggling in year one just because of his supporting cast is not going to be that good. It's going to be lackluster at best. And so from the Panthers' perspective, although I do like the risk that they took, I'm going to give it probably maybe a B. I'll give it a B, actually. I'll give it a B. We have to see how it works out because it's boom or bust. It's very boom or bust. But I do appreciate, I'm going to keep reiterating this, I do appreciate the risk that they took to try and make that move. But anyways, that's going to be it for this video. I want you guys to go down below and comment who you think won this trade. And who do you think the Panthers are going to select at number 1 in the draft? That's going to be it. Thank you guys so much. Like the video, comment, and subscribe, and I'm out of here.